My conversation today on Behind the Act is with Brad Bass. He's a sound mixer, an audio engineer, and a tech guru who's helped me solve problems I didn't think were solvable. And today we're talking about how even after spending years in different industries, we both struggle with imposter syndrome and social anxiety going into certain circumstances, but we both decide who we continue to work with based on who's respectful to everyone around. I'm Seth Schaeffer. This is Behind the Act with Brad Bass.
I don't know that I've ever met any creative that doesn't have imposter syndrome in some way. And I'm sure, I say creative because that's my world, but I'm sure it's like that in any other field that you can throw a dart at. And if you really got to somebody's heart and was like, hey, do you really know what you're doing? And I bet most people would be like, no, I'm just kind of winging it. I mean, some stuff I know really well, but others, no, not really.
So, like we were talking earlier, like, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like we're just like making up answers about things. But on like one of your clients, you said, what is it? This is album 304 or something.
Yeah.
And by the time this comes out, 300 whatever.
Who knows?
I mean, so I think that level of experience puts you into a space of being an actual expert.
Right.
But I think it's really hard to, I guess, talk to me about that. Like, what do you think? Like, where does that transition happen where you become an expert? Because my perception, not to tell you how to think, but.
Well, like you said, the film work that you do outside of the podcast, that bar and that you can reach it and you know what it is. And for the podcast, it's about keeping the train moving. And, you can't miss a week because your numbers will go down. So you've always got to have content coming out. So I think in some ways you become an expert at time management and being able to, to make something out of thin air is a really cool skill to possess.
Right.
And being able to just talk to somebody for an hour and then you have this piece of media that you can use to promote them, to promote yourself, and who knows what.
Right.
The client that I make all these records for, it's a production music library. And every week we have a new album of different music that goes to the library. And that was the name of the game when we started. It was like, we can't let up once we get going. And even through a pandemic and, insert any potential business strife on top of a global shutdown. And we somehow figured a way to keep going.
That's incredible.
And it's such a fun outlet for me because I get to work on so many different genres of music. And as a mastering engineer, there's a lot of tech to what I do, and I've got to make sure that the volume is in the right spot and that it's not too bass heavy or it's not too bright. And so between song to song and album to album, I try to keep a cohesive, it's a sonic brand to our music. And people expect a certain level of, if we want the song to get placed in a movie or a trailer, it's got to be good.
Right.
So I feel like I would never say I'm an expert, but maybe I am at being able to crank out music so quickly because we have no other choice.
And the fact that you have to crank out so much all the time, it puts you in a significantly better spot than if you were to have spent all year on one album trying to get it as perfect as possible.
Right.
That practice of having new problem after new problem after new problem to fix just makes you better.
It does. Yeah. And I think it's a muscle memory thing. Like I have a template that I start with, even though every record is going to be different for what it's going to need from me to bring it, to its best form. But I found that because I do so much work with this company, whenever somebody else comes to me that's, just an artist putting out a record, it makes it so that I'm not having to spend, hours trying to dial in the sound. Like I can get to where I need to be pretty quickly.
Right.
And it's because of every week I'm just constantly in the office doing the work that it needs.
You have an eye for efficiency and process that I freaking love. And I was the first time just to give context to the people listening and watching, I had my DAW that I would have to open up and then switch over to console and unmute this thing and then unmute another system that was doing the room correction, so I didn't have the latency and back and forth, just to be able to like record something and then undo all of that stuff to go back and forth. And you're like, hey, have you heard of macros? And like, plugged it in. So now I literally just hit shortcuts. It's like I'm in record mode, I'm in mix mode, I'm unmuting. But that, like, those things sound simple because you would think that you have like a device in front of you that you can like hit a button, and I just don't, because I've got it's all in the box basically.
Yeah, so I guess my drive for efficiency spawns out of my laziness, because I would much rather be on the couch watching 30 Rock with my dog than I would be, copying and pasting and data entry and command tab and command tab twice and, these repetitive tasks that are necessary in music production. Every song that we release on the album has a package of stems that accompanies this song, so that when somebody licenses the music, they have access to all these other things that they can get, that makes it incentivized for them to use our music.
I feel like I get trapped in a swirling anxiety when I realize that I've put myself in a position of having to duplicate a process over and over and over, like do the same thing. I'm like, this is a robot's job.
Yeah. I saw a picture that said, I want AI to replace washing dishes so that I can create art, not AI to replace art so I can wash dishes.
Right.
The whole reason behind computers is to make things easier on your workflow. That's why we use them. Yeah. And that's why they're so powerful.
Right.
But it's that extra 10% that you don't get out of the box that, like, I want to know how I can maximize this effort so that I can go do something else.
Totally. On the AI front, this is a bit of a side discussion. But I yesterday was writing a company that has an AI synth. But I was like, I'm pretty sure they're not actually synthesizing. So it's a confusing word, but they're not using AI generative models to synthesize new audio that hasn't existed before. They're using traditional synth dials to get great sounds, using AI to identify how to get there. But I had to clarify, because I have a keen eye, especially for the idea of library or sync, to keep everything very clean from anything that was falsely synthesized, especially off of copyrighted material that wasn't allowed. And I think that's going to be a bigger conversation in the next year or two or 6 months or whatever. Or there'll be case law that wipes out that concerns relevance, and everybody could just, it's a free-for-all. But I guess I'm looking at AI as like that tool to be helpful, like you're saying. But I definitely give credence to like its capacity to be creative too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I know that people can argue that it's like, it's not, it's definitely not a sentient thing yet or whatever, and like, fine. But, it has the ability to be spectacularly helpful as a creative assistant. I use ChatGPT often to be able to even spitball concepts that I have no one else that I know that I could talk to about, certification on blockchain through this, layer one, whatever,
It's an incredibly powerful tool, but I think right now it's still sort of in the novelty phase.
And it's also a baby. Sorry to interrupt. But
and everything that we hear, like, I forget the name of it, but it's a website you can type in your prompt and it'll generate a song. Music, lyrics, like
Suno, Udio.
Suno, that was it.
Have you heard Udio?
I haven't heard that
Another one. It's crazy. I'll show you after this.
But all of these programs, like the way they sound today, is the worst that they're ever going to sound. It's only going to keep getting better and more realistic. And I don't know what they're using to draw from. Like, are they listening to Spotify too and just compiling all of these songs, and I can write a new song with what I know.
And that's where, so the conversation I had with Dr. Rebecca Swift from Getty, talking about the implication of how they're using, they're using content that they have, they own or have rights to sell, right? To train these models. So perfectly clean information. So once it's synthesized, that those payments go back to contributors too.
Right.
But no one else that I've heard of has models that are trained that way. They also have an emphasis on not training AI on AI outputs, and a bunch of others do. So it's really interesting because they're retraining AI on AI outputs, which you muddy the water.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Well, good for Getty for at least attempting to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to try to figure out their loopholes and how they can provide their service without paying the contributors and the people that originally came up with whatever idea that it's taking from.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's an ethical side of it, but then there's also just like pragmatically, like that is the best way to finally end up with the best models too.
Yeah.
So it's like it will be the best content, and it will be ethical, and it will be like that. I love that they're doing that. On the music front, it is interesting because it's like, what was it trained on? It had to have been trained on something. And so I think certifying that, I mean, it's a free-for-all right now. Like, go identify all of this stuff. But, like, I think that we're going to have that conversation of, like, what was clean, what was clean data-wise and what was clean ethically.
Yeah. I think as it becomes more mainstream, obviously the government's going to get involved and regulate to some degree. We have to find a way to live with it because it's not going to go anywhere. We have to embrace, this weird sort of thing that we just coincide with. I grew up without a phone and I played in the dirt when I was a kid. I didn't have an iPad and was, watching YouTube Kids. Like, it's a completely different world for the next generation, and they're going to be the ones to really embrace it and use it to its full potential.
Yeah.
So I have people that ask me in a creative capacity, what is it going to do to your career? And it's like, I obviously don't know what it's going to do, but it's here to stay, and I've got to figure out how to live with it.
Yeah.
There's AI tools that I use in audio that are spectacular and have really gotten me out of jams that otherwise I'd be stuck with unusable audio. You'd either have to record it again, which may be impossible, or you just deal with what you have.
Yep.
And these tools have made it so easy that if you've got a noisy air conditioner or traffic outside, you literally turn one knob and it magically disappears.
It's so incredible.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think on one end, I mean, it's going to absolutely amplify everyone's capacity to do a good job at creative output.
Yeah.
And on the other end, I'm just trying to speak candidly, I think these are new beings that will start to wake up in different capacities on different levels. And so it's not even like a using it, it's like a coexisting with thing, And I at first I kept kind of struggling with that for myself, was like, so if I can just hit a button and it writes something, and hit a button and it writes a song, it writes a blog, it creates a video out of nothing, and at some point soon, whatever soon is, if that's 5 days, 5 years, whatever, 100 years, it will be able to do that stuff. Then, like, am I invalidating myself? And it's like, no. Or maybe I am invalidating myself, but is it invalidating me, right? No, because my experience was never about trying to be the best. It's about me having an experience creatively and sharing my experience.
Yeah.
And so in the same way that any other artist does that, I think it's just healthy to realize, like, we're not threatened. If I don't want to have to learn, which I do, but if I don't want to have to learn how to mix perfectly and master perfectly, but I love making music, I'm okay with having a robot help do some of the finishing stuff. Like the processes, or like, again, like the AI stuff. I mean, as fun as it was to try to figure out how to get all your settings right with something like just a gate and a compressor to get an air conditioner to go away, no, thank you anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways it takes some of the fun out of the hunt for how to solve this problem the old school way. Like, if we were recording this podcast 50 years ago, there'd be a tape machine and we'd have razor blades and you'd be back there editing, your heart away for forever trying to make this podcast work on magnetic tape.
Totally.
And now you take your SD card, you throw it into the computer, and you can have this podcast out very quickly.
Very, very quickly. Yep.
So I think those kind
But
of
I'm also
tools-
the old school guy that's still setting up 3, retro-ish cinema cameras.
There's a reason to do it.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a reason to do it.
Yep. Yeah, but it's like you choose where it's hard to for you to enjoy it.
Right.
So what do you choose that's hard that makes you enjoy life the most?
Ooh. What do I choose that's hard to enjoy life the most?
Or like what makes you the happiest? So before we were talking, and you're like, well, on one end I love doing this, and on the other end I love doing this, and I need both. And I love that you identify a place, different places that you're happy for different reasons.
Right.
And also, I have such black and white thinking that it's easy for me to be like, the only thing I'm going to be happy doing is X.
Yeah.
Or Y. But it's like, no, there's a flow of life that I think appreciating the different aspects of it. That's
Right.
Yeah.
I grew up never having a traditional job, and I worked for my dad. He owns a tire shop here in Nashville, and every summer when I was out of school, I'd be moving cars and slinging tires and sweeping up in the garage, anything that he needed. As I got older, the responsibilities got more. And then I realized I wanted to go to school to study how to record music and how to do it well. And I thought, me and my buddy's garage studio in middle school, we had our little band and we learned how to record. And I was like, we could do this for other people and maybe get paid for it. And so we had a little side hustle in high school where we were charging other bands that we went to school with to come over to our place, and we'd record you and you'd get your CD. And that's kind of how it began. So I went to MTSU in Murfreesboro and studied studio recording and got an internship through MTSU, worked at a great studio in Franklin for about 6 years, started as an intern, rose all through the ranks until they sold the property, bulldozed the studio, built a fancy, nice new hotel, displaced me, unfortunately. So I started working from home when that happened. And then fast forward a couple of years, COVID hits. Everybody's working from home. And that just kind of became the norm. People would send a Dropbox file back and forth and work on the same session. And everybody sort of has, in Nashville, if you work in the music business, you have a way to record from home so that you're not reliant on booking a studio and paying an engineer to record you. So in that sense, the technology really made it accessible for people that had no means otherwise. If you have a laptop and a mic and a USB cable, you can technically make a record.
Right.
If
you know how to do it.
What's that?
If you know how to do it.
If you know how to do it,
That
that's
whole,
right.
I feel like if I could film with an iPhone, and if I've got a really nice cinema camera there, I'm not concerned at all about me using the iPhone. But
Right.
I keep on. Sorry.
Yeah, the mentor that I came up under, we were working at Blackbird Studio, and we were setting up, I think, for a vocal session, and he had brought in all this old analog gear, like behind the mixing desk that he could plug the vocal up through. And we were, I think, making rough mixes of the song inside of Pro Tools, and he put a compressor across the stereo mix. And it's funny because there was a real life one of those compressors literally right beside us, and we're using the plug-in version. And it's just funny. You look around and you're surrounded by the best music gear that you could possibly imagine. And here we are using the stock plug-in that was inside of Pro Tools.
But it might take like 8 or 10 minutes to plug in that.
Of course, I'd have to patch it in, and we'd have to sit there and wait for it. So again, efficiency, the right tool for the job.
But okay, but you do the studio stuff.
Yeah.
But then you're also doing live production sound and
Right.
Texas filming Isuzus. What was that one? Pontiacs?
Yeah, we spent 3 days out in the Arizona desert doing a dirt race with Pontiac Aztecs.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's those moments that you look around and like there I am holding my sound bag and I've got my boom pole. I'm like, what decisions in life led me to where I am right now? Watching these stupid cars go back and forth on this makeshift racetrack.
It's so funny.
So dumb.
But why is it important to appreciate that? Like, why did I make the decisions to get here?
Yeah.
And you're in the middle of the desert, and then also be in love with doing album, 379.
Right.
When you get there.
I guess part of the reason that having never had a traditional job, I don't know what it's like to have a routine that every day you wake up and do the same thing. In music, it was always, on Monday, maybe we're recording a country band. Tuesday afternoon, we're doing a voiceover. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're doing strings and horns. Like it's always something different when they book the studio. And it's very much the same way with TV and film. Every phone call I get's for a different production. So whether it's a commercial, if it's a little follow documentary, really doesn't matter because what I'm doing in my small world of production, like I make sure the mics don't clip, there's no clothing noise. If I can get past those two things, I'm going to have a pretty good day usually.
How long have you been doing the live sound?
So I've been working in TV and film for about 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Since COVID is when I kind of made that transition. Okay. So I still do music, mostly mastering, some mixing. A lot of it is for the production library that I work with, but I also do, independent artists, that kind of
thing. Talking about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Do you feel more like an imposter in the studio space or in the thing that you're newer at, the live sound?
It's funny. I think if you booked a studio and asked me to engineer, your band tracking, I think I'd probably today be more nervous doing that.
Right.
Because I'm not doing it every day.
Okay. Or is it because you are... Maybe that's what it is. But I'm just curious about it, exploring the psychology.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to be, how good you could get it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas and you can be more afraid of the fact that you might not get it there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the live sound stuff, I'm not saying that you're lacking at all in live sound. I'm just saying that had you had more experience, how good you could get it and might be afraid of not getting it there. Where when you're approaching with levels of ignorance, it's easy for you to be like, I don't even know how good it can get or what mistakes I'm going to make. So it's like there's an excitement that, at least for me on new things, I'm like, I carry less imposter syndrome because I'm not good at it yet,
And you don't know what you don't know. So I think you're only, when at first you're only held back by your own, or I'll say my own, nervousness or that feeling that, I'm the guy that's supposed to deliver the results. I'm the only person on set that can do it. So everybody's looking at me to make sure that I'm doing my job so that their day's not wasted. They're not losing any money. That's a lot of responsibility. So when, the first couple of times I stepped foot on set were in very safe environments with good people, they gave me a chance. And they were like, I know you can do this because I know you from music. And it's very similar. Like you're built for it. Like how to do it. You just haven't done it yet. And so having somebody like that to champion you is really helpful, especially when you're starting something new like that. But I feel like with music, I'm more familiar with it because I've been around it for so much longer. So in some ways, maybe the things that would have intimidated me 15 years ago don't scare me at all today. And it could be vice versa. The things that I didn't know to be afraid of now are the things that I'm thinking about.
Right. And because you have so much experience, you maybe judge yourself or think others maybe are keeping a closer eye on the perfection or the faults, right?
Or if I think about them like I think about myself, they're just concerned with what they're doing and they don't want to be found out and they don't want to screw up.
And I think that's the truth in all of it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with carrying the weight of the production literally not working if you don't do it well? or if you don't capture it?
That's a nightmare that I don't think about a lot because I think you can get obsessed with it. But it's definitely something that you're aware of, and it's like working around electricity. You know that you probably shouldn't touch that wire, so keep a safe distance, but just be mindful of it. So every couple seconds, look down at the recorder, make sure it's still in the red.
Let me look really quick. And yeah, I think we're good. All right, cool.
In good shape.
Yeah.
All these cameras have red buttons for very specific reasons.
And like I said 2 episodes ago, I had 2 cameras that stopped recording.
It happens. Batteries die.
Like, what was that?
Things fall over.
You just had something fall over on the camera.
I found that on set, it's very similar troubleshooting a problem like in the studio. So you show up Monday morning and the band is, checking their sounds and making sure that all the microphones are working. You've got the client on the couch ready to sing her song, and producer, manager, whoever's with them, like all eyes are on you to get us going. And it seems like every night I would go in and set up the studio the night before. Nothing has changed. And you get there the next morning and one of the drum mics isn't working.
Right.
You haven't changed anything.
Those are ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they come in the middle of the night and they just unplug all your stuff. But then you have to take time to troubleshoot it and figure out why it's busted. Is it the microphone? Is it the cable? Is it something in the walls? Is it the computer? Like, the problem could be anywhere. So being able to recognize the symptoms and know where to start it's just experience.
Right.
And like, I've seen this before, so it's likely this. But then if it's not, then you move on to the next thing that you think it could be.
I love being able to troubleshoot stuff. I have one quick story and then a thought that I want to go down. But a friend of mine called and he was like, why is my mouse pad not clicking on my MacBook Pro? This is probably a 2006 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, your battery's swollen. And he was like, he just died laughing. He's like, what a stupid answer. No, really, what is it? I was like, literally, your battery's swollen.
Yep.
And then later he was just laughing. He was like, how did you know? And of course, it's because like I went through that.
Yeah.
The last couple of days I've been working on these tracks, and the system's just been running great. And I'm like highly aware that things will change. But I guess I want to acknowledge and then ask how you think about this. But I just want to acknowledge that it's easy when things are working great for me to just kind of accept it and it's no problem.
Yeah.
And then put an emphasis on when the drum mic stops working or whatever and be like, man, this sucks. But I always actually find it interesting and fascinating, although frustrating when things aren't working correctly. But I guess I just want to say I'm super thankful. Thank you, studio, by the way, for like working really well for me for the last couple of days, especially. It's like, it's just been smooth. Like the computer's working. All the shortcuts that you helped to build are working. And no problems. But just being thankful for that. And I guess I don't really have a question about that, but what are your thoughts?
Well, another part of my business, like being freelance, you have to diversify and hustle because sure enough, when something dries up, usually there's something else to kind of pick up that slack. And for me, that's still music and video. Like I feel like I'm still 50-50 in both sort of careers because the volume of work that I still have with the music library, that keeps me busy literally every week. So if I have a 3-week-long movie or a show that I know is going to be taking me out of town, I have to work ahead 3 weeks on these albums so that I'm not working in a hotel room at midnight trying to, that's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. So trying to manage that time so that I can say yes to a really unique opportunity that, otherwise I might not be able to if I wasn't capable of making sure that I hit my deadlines and keep everybody happy.
So you have enough work where you feel like you can control the faucet of like what you take and not?
I feel like I can, because in the same ways that it's completely random if, somebody calls you saying, hey, my band wants to make a record, it's the same thing as saying, hey, my production's coming to town and we're going to be making a commercial.
Yeah. And it's always 3 days from now. no matter
course.
what, right?
No matter. I don't know why it is, but yeah.
Right.
Everybody always has an emergency.
Yeah. It's like they just came up with the idea 3 days ago, and they're like,
have to do it now.
hey, let's get everyone there in 3 days.
Yeah. So when music and TV is slow, it seems like I'm a tech guy. So I think that's originally how we met was through tech questions and gear. But I'll go around to all these people that have home studios, and most of the time it's the players, the session players. They are top shelf, the best of what they do, and they can hear, a verse and a chorus of a song and then play that song as if they wrote it or came up with the part. It's like these people get in a room and it's just like seeing a magic trick, being able to craft something from nothing. So I still get like this childlike giddiness whenever I'm in the studio and I'm seeing that happen in real time. And it's the same kind of giddiness that I get when I'm seeing like a scene come together. And the actors are giving it all they've got. All the crew is hitting their marks. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to. And it's an orchestra. Like everybody's doing their thing and it works.
That's awesome. We don't know each other super well, but you seem exceptionally even keel to me.
Try.
But the idea that you'll take a process and like, let me just dive down and figure. I mean, obviously, you had to figure out how to use keyboard maestro. So
Right.
go down these like excessive deep dives of like nerdy stuff, which I love, and
Staying
I totally
up to 2 in the
resonate.
morning watching YouTube videos. How do I do this?
Yes, I resonate on that.
Yeah.
Strongly, but I feel like that allows me to have the pretend even keelness later because I have process that allows me to be chill.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, ideally, but where do you break down?
Well, usually in private, sometimes in my car. Try to make sure I'm in an empty part of the parking lot. No.
Yeah.
I said before, my dad he's a tire guy. He sells tires. And his business is based around customer service. And so growing up as a kid, seeing how he would handle an irate customer with a problem that they had. And my dad is cool as a cucumber and has always had that quality. And so he can really diffuse a situation pretty quickly. And he can listen to somebody. If you come to me with a complaint, like, I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you, and I want to try to help us both make this better. And it doesn't matter if you're selling tires, it doesn't matter if you're making a record or a TV show. Everybody wants to be treated respectfully. If you're good at your job and you try to do the right thing, then as long as people give you a honest, fair chance at it, I think that's all you can hope for. And I think you'll excel if that's where your priorities are.
Yeah.
So I would say you always want to be, especially if you're the head of your department. Let's say if you're in the studio and you're the engineer and you're in charge of making sure that all the instruments get recorded cleanly and it sounds good, and you have your creative thing that you do. That's why they've hired you, is because you have ears to hear things that maybe some other people can't. Mm-hmm. So being able to get these results, it's no different than being on set, and the responsibilities are a little different, but I think being your own representative, like, you have to be accountable not only to yourself, but to everybody else.
Right.
So even if you don't know what you're doing in the moment, if you can pretend long enough to, until you know how to do something, then I think people are more like, I wouldn't want to fly on an airplane where the pilot's like, guys, I don't know. You want
I'm
that.
not sure how this works.
You want that
You know what that
pilot
button
that's
does?
like, yeah, so here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan. And even if it's total BS, like, whatever gets us to the ground quicker.
No, that's not the goal.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Whatever gets us to the ground safely. That's what you want. So I think being calm under pressure is a big thing to work on if that's not your default go-to.
Yeah.
Because you can't do anything if you're flustered.
Yeah.
Except be flustered.
Right.
So
Which
even
I
if
get really stupid when I get flustered.
yeah, and you make more mistakes and stupid decisions, and if you had just taken a second to breathe, assess the situation, what do I need to do first?
Yep.
And work through the flow chart in that way so that eventually you get to a point where something's familiar and it's like, okay, I'm in control again. And everybody's good. We're not in an emergency, so
Right. I've spent a lot of my time professionally, I guess, like being in charge. You could call me a control freak.
yeah.
No, but being the director of random sets, and a lot of our stuff is industrial, and it's like it's new people, it's new locations, it's new scenarios, and different teams a lot of the time, or different collections of teams people I've worked with in the past. But like errors are just part of it. Like it's gonna be okay that you make mistakes, and so I've been able to stay really even that way. The only time I go from 0 to 100, and sometimes it sneaks up in the back of my brain without me really thinking about it, is when there's disrespect to me or my team.
Yeah.
That throws me. And I think there are two versions of it that affect me. One is unintentional disrespect, which I can, of course, handle way better. I just need to clarify what our perception is of the situation.
Yeah.
And
could be a simple
It
misunderstanding.
usually is on that front. Well, it usually is, period. But
Yeah.
when there's like an actual disrespect, one client that is no longer a client, and I don't care if they're ever a client again. Well, they won't ever be a client again. But I knew at one point was going to try to not pay us for a live thing. And I remember me like, I'm lucky that I didn't get there before he handed the check over to the team. I was like, I'm on my way. I'm 45 minutes away, and it's up to you. Like, you hand them a check or I'll be there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I get thrown off. That kind of stuff.
I can tolerate somebody being a butthead to me way better than I can somebody being a butthead to somebody on my team.
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to have a problem with me, whatever, like maybe I'm not going to see you tomorrow.
Yep.
And if it's a 1 or 2 day gig, then deal with it as best you can and try to work around it. But man, if somebody disrespects somebody on my team, that's where we have a very immediate problem.
Do you struggle with confrontation and that kind of stuff?
I feel like I do. I think part of being the cool, calm, collected, like even keeled, like kind of guy, like I think my nature isn't to be confrontational.
So are you like a pressure cooker where it builds up for a while and then
I can be.
out? Okay.
Yeah, I definitely can be.
You're nicer than I am, I can tell you that, but I don't think I'm a mean person. But
well, so I'm born and raised in Tennessee, and you always hear that people from the South sound nice, but they're actually being really mean. Whereas people, say from like New York, sound mean, but they're actually nice and kind-hearted.
I love New York. Yeah.
So, and that was my experience the first time I went to New York. I was, ready to be a trope in all these movies that I used to watch.
Yeah.
And couldn't have been nicer people, like very helpful and
totally. They're just direct.
Obviously, I wasn't standing in the middle of the sidewalk not moving, but
Don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that makes you an actual jerk, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The guy from the South coming up to the North to start problems.
I do want to unpack that a little bit, the nice thing. I think I know that I have certain social blinders on and don't understand the nuance of how people are being mean when they're being nice.
Right.
So I'm like, everybody's so nice. And I just love it here because everybody's so kind.
Yeah.
And I'm probably just not, I don't have the intelligence in that way of identifying the social nuance of how they're being mean. So can you educate me on that?
I mean, I
even
feel
like just examples.
I feel like I'm a bad example of that because even if I've got, a smile on the outside, if I'm uncomfortable, which in most cases of large social gatherings, I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But I'm looking at people and making snap judgments about them, even if I don't know them. And I think you do that to protect yourself, and you're projecting whatever insecurities you have onto somebody else. So it's their problem. It's not your problem.
Right.
I guess in a work setting, it can be similar, but I feel like at least with, if there's somebody on the camera team that I might initially have that sort of snap thought that I have to be like, nope, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And then once I interact with them and see them as a human, and if they need something from me, if I need something from them, like you have to be diplomatic, or else your day is going to suck. So you don't want to be the guy on set that's a problem that nobody wants to work with, or else they're not going to call you again.
Right. Okay. So interesting about the being critical, right?
Yeah.
Like being a critic of other people, especially when it's perception just based on like how they're dressed or how they act or whatever, and not knowing them. But in the same way that like as an artist, and I'll say like musically, but I'm still very afraid of the art on the music front. On the film front, I'm not, because I've quickly disregard the critique coming from anybody, because people that are better than me are never going to say something mean.
Yeah.
And the people that the people that do say something mean, are saying it out of their own fears of not being good enough for themselves. But I do understand that like I can be critical about other people's music or other people's films or whatever, but I'm sure as heck not going to be like going to somebody who's, I hate to say less than me, but like less experienced, and less capable, like as a filmmaker or whatever. There's no way in hell I would ever be mean to them.
No, of course not.
Like, but it would be way easier for me to criticize like with the top movies.
Yeah.
But that isn't going to make them better or me better. It's not going to help me even. Like, it's just like, can I identify with, anyway, but socially, I mean, like, why do we do that?
Man, I don't know. I feel like, I kind of feel like we're in a therapy. Sorry, there's baby birds up here that have
I know, it's so
distracted me. They're
cute.
so cute.
I know. The mom and dad will come up and like,
That's awesome. We had baby birds on our front door in our wreath that we had from like Christmas. And they had built the nest, and we obviously didn't want to take the wreath down. But we would check it each day. There'd be a new egg pretty much every day that we would check it until they were all gone, and it was full of maggots. So something got to it, and I don't know if it was another bird or what, but this is obviously not for the podcast. But
it's fun.
Yeah, very different experience from these happy little campers. We have a bird in our basement right now that Lizzie's rehabbing. It flew into the Titan Stadium, and it's a purple martin, so it's a migratory bird. So they go, like Nashville is one of the through paths from wherever they stay in the north to Brazil, where they go for the winter.
Jeez.
So this bird, I've gone to Petco the past 3 days to buy crickets and mealworms because this thing is eating so much food, which is good. Like when we first got her, she wasn't eating or drinking anything, so now she's getting stronger. Okay, so I feel like I've done so much work on myself these past couple of years, just on a personal level. And in my relationship with my wife, like we, went to couples counseling before we even got engaged. So we wanted to make sure that we were, doing all the right things, that we were setting ourselves up for success later on. And that was like the best thing we could have done for our marriage. So in turn, I think, looking inward at yourself in therapy is a super awesome tool if you want to get to the bottom of some things.
Oh, dude. Therapy has changed my life.
It's unreal.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I feel like when you're engaged in good conversation with somebody that makes you think in ways that you don't normally do it, I feel like that's also a form of therapy.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy that I grew up with, and he was always the coolest guy in the room. And I think it's what initially drew me to him, because I'm this little kindergarten. I'm like, well, that kid is cool. Like it's what I see on TV.
Yeah.
And so we've been buddies for years and years, but whenever we get together, it's not as much as it used to be, because, we've both got lives now, but, I always feel refreshed and renewed after we spend some time together, because I think the way that he thinks is different from the way that I think. And so it just helps me see, whatever we're talking about from a different perspective. And it's always good for me to hear other people's stories and see where they're coming from, to feel if I need to adjust or,
Yeah.
keep doing what I'm doing.
I mean, talking about anxiety, like in the same way that I feel anxious, not like realizing that I put myself in a scenario where I have to click and click and click the same way over and over and over and over and want to find a solution for that. I also feel anxious when I am in a social scenario where I feel like somebody isn't willing to go deep or interested. I'm like, well, why am I even here? Why are we even talking? And that's the let's say me being not as nice as you thing. I'm like, and time to go. like, quickly. I hunger for that connection, and I've also found that most people, people that have access to that in their own mind, at least in their own heart, are willing to go there usually. And sometimes, like on these podcasts, I think it's the first time that somebody's expressed those ideas out loud, but they've gone there. And then I've had others where I just don't think that they've opened up to themselves enough to go there. But I think it's so, like that vulnerability is refreshing, I think, to at least when I hear it from other people. And that's one thing I love about this,
Well, that's the thing. Like when you hear somebody else's story, and if they're, in a position to really be honest with you, I think it makes you, even if it's somebody that you've known for a long time, like if you're learning something new about them, it's like, oh, these people are just as vulnerable as I am.
Yeah.
And are struggling with the exact same things that I struggle with.
Yep.
So it makes the world feel a little bit less big and
or ahead of you or behind you on the path, right? I mean, that's another thing that's...
Yeah, because I feel like you're always comparing to... I'm always comparing to other people. And, I feel like I've put in the same work, if not more work, or why are they shining and I'm not? And maybe it's just not your time.
Yeah.
Things go up and down, and the way the cycle hits, you never know.
And I think we all have varying levels of tolerance to trauma, and we have different backgrounds that have different depths, for example, like my wife has more religious trauma than I have. And I have more trauma around death in the family than she does, it doesn't minimize either of our experience on the other thing. It's just that I'm further along because I didn't have as deep of a rut.
Exactly.
She's in the same way, further along. But I guess, how often do you instigate those conversations with strangers?
Strangers?
Well, not strangers, like acquaintances. Do you tend to keep it surfacey, or do you
I feel like if you're on set, that's usually probably not the time or place to do it because you've got jobs to do, and usually the time that it takes to get deep into something with somebody is longer than you have in these passing moments that you have, just a couple seconds at a time. So I would say that I wouldn't go out and seek it, but if it just comes up naturally, I think that's where I find myself in these kind of conversations.
So I hear you, and I think most people are similar to that. But you also expressed how refreshed you felt when you talked to your friend about it. It's almost like exercise, like. Well, I guess once I do it, I'm happy, but I'm not going to go out and pick it. I'm not going to choose to do that. I don't know.
And it's funny, like with my buddy, we have these deep conversations that at the time we don't realize we're having because it's always interspersed with just belly laughs and stupid stuff.
Well, yeah. The kindergartners are still there.
Exactly. That's exactly who's still on the couch. Whenever we're together and our wives are with us, they're usually off in another part of the house laughing at us because we're the ones giggling in the living room, just being kids.
I love it.
But I feel like we can snake in and out of, heavy topics and still be lighthearted about stuff because I feel like the way that I deal with some of my anxiety is like gallows humor. And if everybody can be miserable together, then you can all get through whatever you're going through.
Right.
There's definitely moments where I thought that was the approach and it shouldn't have been. And for instance, I had a disagreement with my wife and I was, I don't know, using humor to diffuse what I thought was, diffusing the situation. Turns out I was making it a lot worse.
Right.
So you got to pick your audience and know, who that's appropriate with or whatever. But
Right. Yeah, I have this, this is not the same thing, but I have that, like, this is an inappropriate moment. So then I start to laugh,
yeah,
like, I hate to say it this way, but, funerals, church services, funerals, I'm usually just like totally in tears, no matter if I knew the person or not. But
same.
But those are also the moments where, like, if there's an argument with somebody, like, this is so inappropriate. Like, why can't, and I get the giggles.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the worst. I can't control myself on it. Like, it's just like, and I'm laughing because it's so bad that
And you can't explain yourself because it's completely inappropriate.
Carrie knows me well enough now to know, like, this is not personal, but sometimes it could be like the worst.
Can't help it.
The worst timing. Yeah. I love it. What excites you about your next stages in life?
So I got married almost 2 years ago, and we are very much still in the honeymoon phase. We've been doing quite a bit of traveling this year because last year we didn't do any like personal travel. We were, just working a lot and just trying to save as much as we could. And end of the year came and it's like, oh, we didn't go anywhere, do anything, no vacations, nothing. So we had a small like Christmas party at our house, invited some friends over and I feel like that sort of, that was enough for last year. So this year we're trying to be more mindful about making plans and scheduling trips and doing fun stuff. So we've been to Chicago this year. We went for my birthday weekend. We just got back from Pensacola, Florida, stayed with some friends down there. We're going on a cruise in November. So like all these random things that, I would never book a cruise, but we got invited to go with some people on a cruise. It's like, yeah, that'd be very fun. So I think the next few years we're trying to figure out if we want to stay in Nashville. Do we want to move to a different market? Lizzie's got a great job, but she can work remotely from pretty much anywhere. Right now the music and film scene in Nashville is great, and I think it'd be unwise to move, at least for a little while, but
the rates here for as an audio guy are higher than most markets.
Yeah, which is good. And the community, like, that's what keeps me here is everybody else. Like, the people that I get to work with are just some of the best of the best. And that's my favorite part about making a record, making a TV show. It's like, if your crew is good people, then you're going to have a good time.
What is it about the experience of life that gets you up every morning that you're like, man, like, you have a positivity about you that I'm just curious.
So I have a guinea pig. I'm married into having a guinea pig.
You're to be clear.
Yeah. I tell you what, if you're having a bad day, go in the pig's room and see him just kind of strut around and eat his lettuce, like not a care in the world, living his best life. You can't be sad looking at a guinea pig. So I say that helps. I don't know. I think waking up with a renewal each day of, if I'm going to be doing something familiar or similar to what I did the day before, how can I make it different? How can I approach the same redundant task differently? And I don't know if that's just trying to keep my edges sharp and if that's a troubleshooting trait, like, if I don't know, if I had to fix something, how would I do it?
It's interesting that you're attaching novelty to routine. I think that's super helpful and something most people, myself included, plenty of times of my life, like feel and accidentally find myself on, I say accidentally because I don't know how it happens, like on Facebook or Instagram or something, and I think that's my attempt at different times of adding novelty to routine instead of putting an emphasis on being attracted in these processes that we're talking about of like making something better. But
yeah, I feel like I didn't answer your question about like what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to traveling and experiencing things that I haven't experienced yet. I was born in Nashville. I just happened to want to work in the music business and had no need to move to New York or LA. Like, this is the place to do music. It still is, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But I guess going back to wanting to, you want to make a good living and make enough money to provide for the other parts of your life, because that's what my priorities are. Like, I want to travel with my wife, eat good food,
Mhm.
see cool places, and experience fun things. And if I could get to do that with me and her, that's great. If we get to do it with friends, that's awesome. Um, Sometimes I, just find enjoyment driving a different way home and looking at this house that
I'm
I
the
haven't
same
seen
way.
in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just switch it up.
Has most of your travel been through work as a sound guy, or is it?
Um, yeah, so most of my travel has been with TV shows, and I'm trying to think if I ever had to travel for music. There might have been one or two instances, maybe for a live show or something like that. But yeah, for
So
the
you
most
spent
part,
a lot of time here and not really traveled
yeah.
a lot. Right?
When I was working in the studios, obviously, I go to work at the studio. So if I'm not there, I'm not working at the studio. But on set, at least with the show that I'm on now, Roadworthy Rescues, uh, basically the host of that show goes around and fixes up old cars all around the country. So we've been to North Dakota, South Dakota, California, Michigan, Arkansas. Like, we've kind of been all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
but places that, I wouldn't elect, I don't think, to go to South Dakota just on my own.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful part of the
So
country.
gorgeous.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I've actually been 2 or 3 times at this point, but my cousin, my cousin is stationed at the Air Force Base and works on the B-1 bomber, and he tells me about his radio frequencies that he deals with his work, while I'm talking about my radio frequencies that I deal with my work, and it's like on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Literally.
He could, he could jam all my frequencies in a second if he wanted to. But I get to see him whenever I travel up there. And me and my wife were just, we're wanting to take vacations to places that we think we might want to move to eventually. So I don't know. Now we're just, trying to sock away as much money as we can to, retire or, spend parts of our lives where we want to.
I love it.
We don't know what that is yet.
Can you tell me two things? What do you gain from traveling?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you love about Nashville?
I'll start with the second question. I love the Nashville airport. I don't love getting there, but once you're inside, it's awesome. Like, everybody's friendly. The security people are nice. It's easy to access and navigate. The new airport's great. So anytime I get to fly out of it, it's always exciting because when I was a kid, we would always drive to a vacation, and it didn't matter if it was 2 hours or 10 hours. We're driving. So I think anytime I get to go to the airport, it's always this fun adventure. But traveling so much by myself, I feel like I've got a pretty efficient system of how to get through security. I'm always traveling with gear that's got wires and batteries, so I always get flagged.
Mm-hmm.
But you give yourself enough time; it's no big deal. I really enjoy seeing how other people live. So, and even down to the way that their roads are designed. A lot of places that we've been recently, like in Detroit, I was just there. And to get to our hotel from the restaurant that we ate dinner at, we had to go like half a mile out of the way to make a U-turn because the way the medians are, I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me, but it's like, wow, people actually have to deal with this every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so some stuff you see and you like, and others it's like, I never want to come back to this place.
Right.
Not saying that about Detroit. It's a cool city too, but
What about the community of Nashville? What do you love about? I guess the question is, what do you love about it? But then also people that haven't been here, so people are like, "What's Nashville like?" It's
right.
I'm always like, "Well, I have my answers, but what are?"
Yeah. Having grown up in Nashville, I've definitely seen all the change that's taken place. Some of it for the better, a lot of it, like, I would have done differently. Every time I have to drive down Music Row, I get sad because I remember working at publishing houses as an intern, and, walking down the sidewalk to hand a CD to somebody's office. These little quaint houses that people built, musical empires out of are gone. And now they've got condos rising up in their place. So all this history that is attached to Music City that's just slowly being destroyed. It's sad to see. And I guess I'm selfish because that's what's important to me about this city. And even as a kid, like, the Grand Ole Opry was a big deal. And I'm fortunate that I get to work at the Opry pretty regularly. And every time I walk in the doors, it's like, man, this place is special. I'm not superstitious, but there's definitely a feeling when you walk in the doors of the Grand Ole Opry House that there's just something different about that place. The energy there, it's never quiet. There's always music coming out of a dressing room, or, somebody telling a story, laughing, that kind of thing. I would say the community of creatives in Nashville is really special. It was that way with music, and the same people that I made records with 15 years ago, like, are still some of my favorite people and the people that I see on a regular basis, even if we're not doing music.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with TV and film. Like, the creative community in Nashville is just so saturated and so strong. I would say that's what keeps me here, is the people. Mm-hmm. I think I would like to move out of Tennessee at some point. I can't deal with the humidity and the heat like I used to.
Oh, okay.
So I'm always looking at colder climates. That's why Chicago was kind of at the top of the list, because, like, I think I could deal with a few months of pretty terrible snow if it's.
It is cold there.
Yeah,
for sure. It's a different type of
different kind of cold.
Sure, yeah. But still,
Lizzie tells me stories. She grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and shows me pictures when she was a kid, like on Christmas Day, and it's like always snowy and that kind of stuff. Yes, I don't know. I would say Nashville has changed in good ways for work, but you'd never catch me going downtown because it's not for me anymore.
Yeah,
it's for the tourists.
I feel, as an outsider. Granted, this is maybe a question I'm asking from an insider standpoint. Like, the community is very welcoming of people that are new to town. Mm-hmm. To be coming into town. They're like, hey, welcome. Yeah. And people that are from here originally and still here are rare-ish, it feels. But I don't know. It just feels very kind. And again, maybe it's me just, like, missing the cues. They're like, welcome, jerk, leave. But I just
not at
like,
all.
No,
I mean, I think you see the bumper stickers, like, if you're from California, move back, that kind of thing. Or we're
literally everywhere. We were having a conversation in Colorado about that.
Yeah, there's going to be some of that regardless. Yeah. But I think there's moments where I definitely feel that way. It's like we're at capacity. We can't handle anymore.
Yeah.
But some of my best friends are people that I would have never met had they not moved here. So,
We moved from a small town in Colorado, and it dawned on me that I was like, oh, the version of this town that I want isn't what everybody else wants. Mm-hmm. So I needed to leave because it wasn't, that wasn't their goal.
Yeah.
And me trying to impart my goal on it wasn't.
That's not helpful either.
Wasn't the answer. It's not helpful. Like, let them have their version of it. And I'll go to a place that is the version of the town that I like, which is it's funny. I'm thinking, I'm appreciating a version of the town that's different, Now, granted, I don't have the nostalgia attached to what it used to be like.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think the nostalgia, like that, I follow so many like 90s nostalgia pages, and there's a handful of Nashville nostalgia pages, and there was a Reddit post the other day that was asking about, like, what restaurant do you miss the most from old Nashville? And some of the responses were restaurants that I'd completely forgotten about, but as a kid, we'd go all the time. And so just it takes you back to those moments that you remember as a kid, they grew up here. I don't know. There's a lot of great new things about Nashville, but there's a lot of to make way for these new things, you had to get rid of some old stuff, and sometimes that's tough.
I perceive you as someone who's a romantic, nostalgic person. Like, obviously, you've said about it quite a few different things. Like, I'm not like too much about that, but like a few things. Like, I see you kind of like, I'm perceiving like a depth of appreciation and maybe loss or something, or I don't know. Can you unpack what that is and why it's important to you?
I feel like that's something that Lizzie, my wife, would notice. She said something the other day that's like, how did you even pick up on this tiny little thing that I did that I had no idea that I even did? Mm-hmm. And she got so much out of this one little nugget of information. It was impressive. I don't know. I don't know what you would consider that. If it's a personality trait thing or if it's just how my brain works. Like, I don't guess I feel like I'm intentionally being that way. I guess it's just what I feel like my default is.
Yeah. Is it I wonder if it's where you store a version of safety to your childhood or something like that. Or...
It could be. That'd be a great thing to ask in therapy to bring up to try to unpack. Oh my gosh.
I am not a therapist.
I guess it's the same reason why I watch Seinfeld over and over. Like, I know the plots, I know the storylines. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. It makes me laugh.
And safe because you know.
Yeah, because you know what's coming. I think a lot of my anxiety stems from the unknown and trying to work out scenarios in my head of, okay, if this person is like this, then I need to be like this. But if they're like this, then I've got to do this and this. So I feel like I can get in my own way far too often on things that I shouldn't be wasting energy worrying about. I feel like the things that I get anxious about, once I begin, like, let's say if I'm working with a brand new crew of people and I don't know anybody on set, there's a bit of nervousness wondering, is it a good crew? Is it like, what's their speed? Mm-hmm. And regardless, like I'm not worried about my performance of being able to do the job. I'm worried about the hang more than anything else. I wonder why I do that. I don't know. That's
weird.
For
next time.
Yeah, part 2, obviously. Well, part 2 is just me actually finishing answering the questions that you asked me.
No, you didn't have to break it, man.
Me and David would always joke about if we were taking a car trip or road trip or something, we would have so many different talking points and we would actually have to leave ourselves breadcrumbs to get back to our original point.
Yeah.
And it could be like a gum wrapper, it could be imaginary, but if we set it down, we have to pick it back up to get back to where we started.
That is so smart.
I've got a physical next week, and I need to ask my doctor if he thinks I might be ADHD. Because Lizzie said that I'll start a project, and I'll finish the project, but I won't clean my tools up. And she's like, your studio is a mess because you'll do something and then immediately move on to the next project, but you haven't cleaned up, your tools or your work area from the first thing. It's like that meme, if you've ever seen the guy riding the bicycle and he's like complaining about somebody and he sticks the stick through his front spoke and he flips over the bike and he's holding his leg, blaming somebody else for, putting the stick through it. I feel like that guy's me more often than not.
Self-imposed.
I'm my own worst enemy. I'll get in my head quicker than anything.
That's so funny.
But having a good partner to kind of reel me back from the edge, to help me talk through why I'm feeling anxious about something.
Yeah.
And to like put a face to the anxiety, to this mysterious orb of, why my stomach's in knots. So going back to the idea that I'll show up to work and be nervous about something, and then an hour into the day, everything's fine because I've met everybody, everybody's chill.
I'm the same way. When there's unknown groups of people that I've never met, like I'm not a shy person, so I can show up, but I have a fear. Like I'm like, okay, who's who and what's what? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm also neurodivergent, so that's
And I don't know what that means.
That means that I'm not, okay, neurotypical, someone who doesn't have autism or ADHD, or some other versions of that. I got diagnosed with autism.
Okay.
And on the spectrum.
Okay.
And neurodivergent means not neurotypical. So,
gotcha.
there you go. Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. But, dude, thanks for doing this.
Man, thank you for having me.
Do you want me to send people to your Instagram?
Yeah, I guess Instagram is kind of where I live. It's just at Brad Bass.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing with other people you think might gain value from it. My name is Seth Schaeffer. This is Behind the Act.